This is a Media Lab podcast.
Oh, Kyle, what's going on? All your lights are... Why are you sitting here in the dark?
I can't figure it out, man. These runes, these markings are making me go crazy in here. I know that they mean something. This machine is trying to tell me something or hint at a future, a possible future that I just don't know what it is.
It's interesting that you're trying to look at these markings in the dark, but I did pass by a prison cell. Is that a thing for you now?
Yeah, that's new. That's new. Listen, I don't shame you about your kinks. You're not going to shame me about mine.
In his own garage, Kyle has built a machine, cobbled together with parts found in his friend's church basement and a dumpster behind the local Dairy Queen. This monstrosity is now alive and evil. Kyle has convinced his friend Dave to help stop the apocalypse by reviewing films the machine picks. The ultimate purpose is still unknown, and Kyle could have probably done this himself, but he's not being dragged to hell alone.
This is Kyle and Dave versus the machine. Welcome to Kyle and Dave versus the Machine. My name is Kyle.
I'm live streaming Dave.
And I'm the machine.
A podcast where a sentient machine forces us to watch movies in order to prevent it from initiating the apocalypse. Although we do tend to talk about the ideas of the movie rather than the movie itself. Today, as Dave just intimated, we are live streaming on YouTube.
Ooh.
So, I mean, obviously, if you're listening to the audio format, this has been weeks ago that we did this.
You missed it.
You get to see how the sausage is made. Dave is one of us is a vegetarian. I'm not going to say who.
Oh, wow.
So
it's not even about
the sausage we make is
amazing.
Disgusting. Yeah. Have you ever had broccoli gristle?
Ugh.
Anyways, this is a thing that we're going to be trying out for the next few weeks. So if you do want to go to our YouTube channel and be notified when we are going live to talk about these films, you get to see all the mistakes we make. We can see all the stupid stuff that's... you're a perfect human being. Before this podcast goes as long as the movie we're going to watch this week, let's talk about The Green Mile.
I think if a man sincerely repents on what he done wrong, he might get to go back to the time that was happiest for him and live there forever. Would that be what heaven's like?
I just about believe that very thing. John Coffey, you have been condemned to die in the electric chair by a jury of your peers, sentence imposed by a judge in good standing in this state. Questions?
Do you leave the light on after bedtime?
Dave, I think where we need to start off is to ask two things. One, what your relationship is with this movie, but also I kind of want to know what your relationship is with Stephen King.
Well, it's been a while since I was on death row. I mean, 1930s. That was a good decade for me.
Probably would have been a great time for you back in the 1930s.
Yeah, America really did well with Asians in that era.
Oh, wait, sorry. Are you Asian?
What?
I didn't realize.
Yeah, I don't think I watched this when it came out, but I definitely watched it after, and that's all I got for you.
Sorry, you do recall watching this movie then before?
Yeah, I have watched this movie before. I did watch it.
And this was positive feelings, negative feelings?
I remember thinking that it wasn't bad. It's not a movie that I would reference as a, defining movie for me. I honestly can't remember much about what's about to happen, right? Because
we haven't seen it yet.
About to watch it.
Please preserve the fiction.
Which is going to be weird for this live stream.
Did you say that you have never watched it before?
No, I've seen this.
Oh,
I've seen The Green Mile.
Sorry.
It is going to be weird, though, on our live stream as we watch this 3-hour-long film in real time. I'm sure the YouTube censors are not going to like that.
Well, the machine's going to trick the algorithm.
Actually, me and the YouTube algorithm used to date. It ended badly. No help from me.
What it's going to seem like if you ever watch this is like we don't actually watch the movie when we tell you we watch. No, I'm just saying it's the machine. It's the machine.
Yeah. It's all this wibbly wobbly time stuff that he does.
As far as Stephen King, he and I do not have a relationship. I never read any of his... I don't think I've ever read... He
cut me off in traffic one time. I've written him off the entire rest of my life.
Son of a... my brother, actually, surprisingly... I was surprised by this. apparently got into reading his books in high school, but I think
That's where a lot of men start to fall in love with Stephen King, is in high school.
I don't know. I was too big of a nerd. I was in the Tolkien world, so Robert Jordan.
So even nerdier then, yes.
No.
Oh, yes, it is.
But I think my brother was more like Dark Tower stuff. I don't know if he's necessarily reading like the horror thing.
Right.
I've never talked to him about it because I'm ashamed for him. And I think as well...
And I don't talk to my brother, so...
we're fine. We're fine. No, okay. And I didn't even know this was a Stephen King adaptation until I wrote some of the backstory of this. So next time I do text with him, I'm going to ask him if he's been to the Green Mile.
Former guest of our show, Jen Hall, is saying hello, friends, or hi, friends, in the chat here. So we do have one viewer right now going on, which is nice.
Jen is staring into our soul.
Into our souls.
Yeah.
So I'll answer the first question first about like my relationship with this movie. Of course, as I kind of keep referring to, the machine seems to be wanting us to watch, at least here in the last couple of weeks, the Best Picture nominees from 1999. And so I think that that's really where I kind of started to hear about this movie first. Maybe I saw some previews. I don't remember. But I definitely remember it being promoted a lot. Definitely Michael Clark Duncan was a big attraction because this was kind of his breakout role. Tom Hanks was Tom Hanks at that time. Like, you knew who Tom Hanks was.
Always automatic, yep.
And so I did watch this. Again, I did not see this in a theater. I don't know if I would have even wanted to see a 3-hour-long film in a theater back then as a teenager. But I did see this on VHS. And if I recall correctly, I'm pretty sure this is broken up onto 2 VHS
probably
tapes.
Probably 2 tapes.
Do not ask me where the break happened. I don't remember where that happened at. But that is definitely where I first saw it. And I think we owned it. Weirdly enough, I think we own this on VHS, even though I've only ever seen this movie one time in my entire life. You and
your family watch a lot of weird family movies. This is not a movie bizarre. I would watch with my family together.
Yeah. Family movies are a weird explanation. I remember liking it quite a bit. And then as I've gotten older, I've definitely... In movie land is what I was about to say. I was
that's fine. Yeah,
so
movie
like
land.
movie Twitter, movie Reddit. Like this movie is like really beloved. Like I don't know if you understand like how beloved this movie is. Like people love The Green Mile, and it's not that I don't like it, but I always was like, yeah, it's a fun movie. I liked it. But it was never one of those films where I was like, oh, I have to watch this again, or it's like this is like the top 10 movies that I've seen growing up or anything like that. It was like it's harder for me because even for movies like that I hate, there's a part of me that was like I could understand someone who enjoys this on some sort of base level. But for movies that I think are like, it's just fine, I was like, I don't understand when people are like in love with it to such a degree that they want to continue watching it. As we'll discover, like I'm not joking when people online love this movie wholeheartedly. So I'm excited to kind of watch it again just to see if my opinion has kind of changed. As far as Stephen King goes, I was pretty late into the Stephen King thing. The first Stephen King novel I read that was not an adaptation of his work, because definitely I think that was my first introduction to him, was the movies. Like I'd seen The Shining, I'd seen this movie, I'd seen Shawshank Redemption, like Carrie, I'm trying to think about Cujo, Pet Sematary. Like I'd seen all of I'd seen it at a way too young of an age. So I knew Stephen King and I understood like what his, like where he was in the pantheon. But actually reading one of his books, it was in my mid-20s when I first read my first Stephen King book. I decided I was going to read all of his books chronologically from when they were written. I didn't last too long doing it that way because his first few books, which is actually Carrie, is his first novel that he wrote, you can tell is a first novel. Like, I don't think that it really holds up all that well as a written piece. But I think what the best of Stephen King is, and we'll see if we agree, Stephen King's biggest detractors will often say this: Stephen King is really great at coming up with ideas. His ideas are like really, really sound as far as like, this is a good story. And he also usually does a really phenomenal job of setting those stories up. Where he falters is usually the resolution. Like how his stories actually end are usually his weakest bits. Even if his like most beloved work, you can usually poke holes a little bit and like, ooh, like how this wrapped up is not the best possible way, or it feels cheap, or it just feels like it's been rushed or something like that. I will give this as a pitch to people. He wrote a nonfiction book called On Writing that I think is phenomenal for anyone who wants to actually be a writer of any type of thing, whether it's nonfiction or fiction. Because I think he actually gives some really great advice in that. He wrote it. I don't know if you know much about Stephen King's life, but he almost was killed in a car crash. And when I say killed in a car crash, I mean he was walking on the road and someone clipped him from behind and like broke his legs and like flipped him a few times and he almost died.
You can't prove anything. I have an alibi.
But during that time of his recovery, he actually wrote this book and talked about his recovery from being like taken out by a car. And it's like, here's what I think people who want to be writers should do. Jen is saying The Green Mile is a wonderful movie.
Uh-oh.
I listened to the audiobook on several cassette tapes from what I remember. # old.
Jen's going to not enjoy this episode of Kyle and Dave. No, I'm just joking. It's not going to go that poorly. I'm sure we'll have nice things to say.
I think I'll have nice things to say. But let's not belabor the point. Let's do this. Let me go thank some sponsors. And then when we return, we'll be talking about The Green Mile. Hi, everyone. Just Kyle breaking into the episode one more time to tell you about all of these great people and organizations that keep Kyle and Dave vs. the Machine running. Now, some people call this show their favorite podcast of all time. Of all time. Now, the votes aren't completely in, and in fact, Georgia is taking a little bit longer to tabulate than you would like, but I'm pretty confident you will find that this is the best podcast. Just believe me. Believe me. However, as always, Kyle and Dave vs. the Machine is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, locally grown, community supported. The Alberta Podcast Network promotes and supports Alberta-made podcasts and connects their audiences with Alberta-based businesses and organizations. This week, Kyle and Dave vs. the Machine is brought to you by the Alberta Forest Products Association. So let's hear from them.
Alberta's forests matter to all of us. That's why Alberta's forest industry works to keep them sustainable now and for future generations. By planning 200 years ahead, helping control the spread of fire and disease, and planting and nurturing 2 trees for every 1 harvested, we keep our forests standing strong. To learn more about how our forests take care of us and how we take care of them, visit loveabforests.com.
This episode of Kyle and Dave vs. the Machine is also brought to you by Unbelts, the Edmonton-based biz that makes the comfiest stretch belts around. Unbelts also makes cloth masks. You're going to need more of those, whether you're heading back to school or just living in a city that requires masks indoors or on the bus. Unbelts masks are designed by serious perfectionists. The masks follow all the latest WHO guidelines. They're ethically made right down to their components, but most importantly, they're super comfortable, even if you have to wear them all day. Unbelts masks have these elastic straps that go around your head instead of your ears, which is a godsend for me. I actually do wear Unbelts masks when I'm out and about, and I found the ones that hooked around my ears were so painful after a couple of hours that I just wanted to rip them off. But with these ones, because they tie behind your head and neck, they are super comfortable. I can wear them all day. They've also got a nose wire that keeps your glasses from fogging up. They've got waterproof performance shell on the outside and an organic cotton lining on the inside. They come in all sorts of colors and 4 sizes, from preschooler to adult extra large. They've been featured in Parents Magazine, Elle Magazine, and were even named Best in Edmonton. And guess what? Unbelts is a certified B Corporation, which means their business is all about giving back. So what are you waiting for? Head to unbelts.ca to order your masks today. Shipping is always free. And if you're an Alberta teacher, click on the teacher discount on their homepage for 20% off your entire order. Once again, that's unbelts.ca. Use the discount code APN at checkout and order your masks today. Well, Dave, what do you think? In the most non-spoilery way possible.
I think we texted this to each other when we fictionally watched this at the same time, but Tom Hanks should have been the first person to win an Oscar for urinating. Best urination.
Okay, I thought it was gonna take a while to get to this point, but I have to tell you, this is my I'm gonna read you the exact note that I wrote down while watching this movie. Tom Hanks' pee face is amazing. Should have been given his 3rd Oscar. And I stand by that statement. The guy, if you don't know, this is really not that spoilery. Tom Hanks is suffering from a bladder infection, so he can't go to the bathroom very easily. And at a certain point in the movie, he's able to pee more freely. And his face goes from horror to trepidation to happiness to like absolute ecstasy. And he does this amazing performance without saying a single word over the course of 30 seconds. And it's at that point, it was like, yeah, like we sleep on Tom Hanks. Yes, he like holds this one record of winning 2 Oscars like back to back. He's kind of done with doing his like biopic thing that he does. Like that's basically all he does, it seems, anymore. But when he's on, like, boy, is he a great actor. And I think that scene specifically just shows that off.
Do you think people sleep on him? Isn't he pretty much automatic? Isn't there...
I think for me, I feel like Tom Hanks is like Meryl Streep, and that people like, yeah, like they're good, but they also think that they're a bit overrated. But then you see a great performance by one of them and like, oh, okay, yeah, they're like they're pretty great when they're doing like something phenomenal.
I always think about Tom Hanks starting off, dating a mermaid or like on a volcano, and then depicting someone dying of AIDS or urinating, freely. He's got range, man. He's got range. I
actually say, like, a few years ago, like, whatever you thought about the film, there's the Captain Phillips. And it's a bit of a meme now, like, I'm the captain now, right? Tom Hanks was not nominated for Best Actor for that role. I think he was robbed. Like, there was a moment where he has a mental breakdown at the very end after he's rescued and he can actually show emotion again. That is so raw and is so good that I was mad that he wasn't nominated. I don't know if he should have won, but I was so mad that he wasn't at least nominated for just that performance alone.
It turns out he's got the Emmy and a Tony, so...
I don't think he won the Tony. I think he was nominated for a Tony, but I don't think he won.
I thought I read that...
But he has an Emmy, and an Oscar.
We'll back check it. So I'm just waiting for him to do like a sing-along album. Actually, they should have released maybe one for the Fred Rogers biopic, and then...
Yeah.
Then you got the Grammy.
Right.
He's good.
Yeah. All he has to do is be the narrator of an audiobook, and they'll probably throw a Grammy at you at that point.
An audiobook? Do you listen to those on tape?
I actually enjoy listening to all my recent novels on 29 cassette tapes. And I flip them back and forth. I like the A side and then the B side.
That's a reference that many people will forget.
And then I rewind them with my pencil.
Pencil rewinding is a key trait. That's a skill set.
Okay, so I mean that's the P face that we're talking about.
That's quite the segue.
But overall, like, what are your feelings on the movie itself?
The movie happened. It was 3 hours long. There are a lot of great. I mean, this is a huge cast. There's so many recognizable people, and they're all good in it.
Phenomenal actors. There are some phenomenal actors in like a 3-minute role on screen this entire movie. I'm like, whoa, why did you get this like amazing person to only be in this thing for 3 minutes?
Yeah, we got to see racist Lieutenant Dan. Anyways, for me at the end, I got a little distracted with the magical mystery tour of the whole thing. I understand how the sort of principal plot device is this mysticism that's behind it. I have some thoughts about what this might have been, sort of drawn from, but I felt fine. But again, like I said at the beginning, this is not a movie that I count in a personality forming experience. I feel a little bit benign. It was fine. I thought it was fine. I didn't fall asleep. And there was definitely some physical cringing. Cringing
because of something bad or because you were invested in the film?
Yeah, I got invested. It's quite brutal.
Where there is a scene that I think is still like gruesome in like modern day standards, where I'm like, Jesus, like I can't believe this is going this far. Because it was so long ago since I actually watched this movie front to back, let me tell you, I completely forgot about the framing device that's in this movie. Basically like the beginning and very ending. I'm like, I do not have any recollection of this part of the movie whatsoever. And I think you could cut it out completely and not lose anything in this movie. And actually, I think make it better. I don't know. I hated those front and end pieces personally. I think they're just there to drag the movie down. And I think there is a very specific point in the movie that is a catharsis that happens. And for me, it's like, that is the end of the movie here. So let's run the next 10 minutes, wrap all these like loose plot threads up and get out. And instead, there is 32 more minutes of movie after that event actually happens.
I'm just imagining you with a stopwatch, like just timing no, the movie's over. Let's see how long this fucking thing takes.
And it is a manual stopwatch then, usually.
I'll agree with you. The one sort of thing that I will add is I think they did a great casting job on that old man, because when they flipped back in time, I was like, that old dude could be Tom Hanks.
Hanks, yeah.
Yeah, aside from that, I forgot about it as well. for American viewers, I guess, about. And I also like, particularly at the end, it was like they're just really clawing.
Maybe it is
back.
really
It's
particularly at the end. It's like, okay, like I get it. Like we don't need to like belabor this.
Everybody's dying. Let's move on. Yeah, it's.
I actually think like when this movie thinks that it's being like super profound and stuff like that, it's kind of at its worst. And I think it's at its best when it's actually having the characters interact with each other and drive the plot forward. Because I really do think like when this movie is good, it is really good. Like there are certain sequences and moments in this that I think are phenomenal. And then it kind of just gets dragged down.
That sounds like a description of any date someone has had with you.
That being said, I will also say this is a movie that essentially leaves every Chekhov's gun fired. Do you know about Chekhov's gun? Do you know that phrase, what that means?
No.
Anton Chekhov. Is it Anton? Anyway, Chekhov was a playwright, but he popularized this idea that if you see a gun in the background in Act 1, someone needs to fire that by Act 3. So if you set something up or bring a piece of important scenery or something, or someone says something in the beginning, you kind of have to pay that off later on, or people kind of become frustrated with your art. Now, I won't necessarily say I believe that every single time, but for most people, they use that term like, hey, something was set up or mentioned or seemed to be like super important this character was saying. We need to have like a little bow wrapped up on that by the end of the movie. And this film basically does that for every single thing that it mentions. If they mention a room or an object or a place or a person, all of those become important. They all intertwine and they all have their endings to all of those things. So I think that they were very consciously, and I don't know about the book because I didn't read the book, so I have no idea what has been adapted, taken out, changed. But regardless, I think that they were able to make all of that work really, really well. So those are some non-spoiler things. Let's get into some background for this movie, shall we? We shall.
On the presumption that I did the work.
The Green Mile was released on December 10th, 1999. A bunch of movies came out that day, but the two major ones were The Cider House Rules, which was directed by Lasse Hallström, written by John Irving, starring Tobey Maguire, Michael Caine. How do you say it?
Michael Caine. No,
there we go.
I'm practicing. I'm working on it.
And Charlize Theron.
Oh, Charlize Theron.
However, also released that day was the seminal film classic, Deuce Bigalow, Male Gigolo.
Male Gigolo.
Directed by Mike Mitchell, written by Harris Goldberg and Rob Schneider, starring Rob Schneider, William Forsythe, and Eddie Griffin.
Talking about being robbed of Oscars that didn't even make the award list.
How did this not even get like Best Original Screenplay? Come on, Academy.
This was the moment the Academy lost all credibility.
Here you're going to start to hear about how much the regular public loves this movie. It is currently rated 8.6 on IMDb, which puts it into the top 250 films of all time on their list. 61 on Metacritic, and over on Rotten Tomatoes, as of 135 critics, it is rated at 78%, and with the public, 813,753 users, it is at 94%.
94?
94. I'm pretty sure that is the highest rated film we have talked about.
94?
94% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Like 94.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, that's how much people love this movie. They adore this thing.
At least the people who would log in.
Yes.
Announced that they...
Asterisk, the people who are actually using Rotten Tomatoes 94. And blah, blah, blah. The people who want to do it. I mean, the critics liked it too. I think that their biggest criticism was the length a lot of the time from what I could see. But 8.6 on IMDb is like phenomenal, as like most films don't get out of the 7s or 6s. So to have it be 8.6 is like pretty high on IMDb as well. It is available on DVD or Blu-ray. You can buy or rent it on iTunes. You can also rent it on Google Play or YouTube. And it is available to stream in Canada.
Here we go.
On the Stars app.
Woo! Show me the money. Come on.
Stars, $6.99 gives you a wealth of entertainment opportunities. In fact, if you like the year 1999, you might find your favorite film among the stars.
I don't understand why they are not paying us yet, Kyle.
I think it is a travesty that they have not given us money to talk about the Stars app.
If we could afford lawyers, we should be lawyering up at this point. Yeah.
If we could have food, groceries, and also lawyers, man, would we be very litigious. Its budget was $60 million for this movie, which I will say It looks like it.
Isn't that the same as Runaway Bride?
I think Runaway Bride was even more, to be honest with
What
you.
the
Slightly
what
more.
the
But this looks amazing. Looks like $1 million, right?
Okay.
$60 million, I guess. It opened to $18 million. Domestically, it would make 136, and internationally, it would make another $150 million, bringing its grand total to $286 million. With inflation, that would be like if they had made $447 million today. This made a lot of money. This was a huge box office draw. And I was thinking about this as the machine is making us go through these films of 1999, and especially these movies that were nominated for Best Picture. It is kind of interesting to see that the frontrunners were these blockbuster films. That doesn't like occasionally it will happen at the Oscars, but nowadays it's usually art house stuff that nobody has actually seen. So it's interesting that we have like The Sixth Sense,
true?
The Green Mile, and other stuff that are like people went and saw these movies en masse.
Yeah, I thought the Oscars was still sort of beholden to the box office thing. I guess
no.
Yeah.
No. That's why they had to change their rules here a few years ago, because they were basically just kept nominating films that nobody had seen.
Oh, in doing the little background, I wonder if some of the money that this and critical acclaim that this movie had was buyer's remorse for people shunning Shawshank for so long.
Yeah, because Shawshank was pretty much shut out of the awards.
And it made no money. Nobody went to go see that.
No money.
Yeah.
This stars, talking to you about the star power in this, I had to expand this from the usual 4 people they try and keep it to.
You got to do the whole cast.
Tom Hanks as Paul Edgecombe, Michael Clark Duncan as John Coffey, Doug Hutchison as Percy Wetmore, Sam Rockwell as Wild Bill Wharton, David Morse as Brutus Howell, and James Cromwell as Warden Hal Moores. But I mean, you have Bonnie Hunt in this, you have Patricia Clarkson in this, you have, who else am I forgetting? Gary Sinise is in this for a little bit. Like, there's a bunch of people that are in this movie.
Yeah, that guy was in that other movie. You know the guy?
Yeah, the guy. I love that guy. So what, anything you want to say about these people? Because Tom Hanks we have discussed already in our Toy Story 2 episode. Sam Rockwell we've talked about in our Galaxy Quest episode. So I don't know if there's anything else we want to speak about other than the fact that Doug Hutchison is like the best evil person in this movie as Percy, and is also a piece of shit in real life. So,
is that true? I'll get there. Yeah.
He was, what was he, 50 years old and married an 18-year-old girl that he had groomed. And yeah,
groomed. Nice. Gross. Disgusting. He is disgusting. I mean, you can't
in this
act
movie,
that, right? That's
the thing. It's like, because I know some of the stuff he does in real life is like, ugh, I hate this guy's stupid face, and he does it so well, and it makes me mad that he actually acts it pretty good, because I hate him. I hate him so much in this movie. So I'm supposed to hate him so much in this movie.
It's great. I just hate him.
I hate him so much.
I couldn't stand to look at his face, and I was waiting for his comeuppance, and then, well, I guess we'll talk about this spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
I could, on loop, watch Tom Hanks slap him across the face.
Yeah, well.
I love that part.
Yeah, the scenes of the, between the guards were great. And, I don't know if we're going to get into the movie, but there are some moments where I really enjoyed it. But by the end of the movie, I think it got a little off track.
I mean, Michael Clark Duncan, like I said, this was his, like, big breakout role. I don't know if he ever...
after Whole 9 Yards.
Oh, that's a good question. I think before. Or about the same time. I don't know. There's a quick answer to that. This is what I kind of remember him first being in, but he would go on to do other stuff. I mean, he was the Kingpin in the really horrible Daredevil movie. I don't know if he ever got back to this same level. That might be mean to say, but I don't know if he did.
Well, he passed away.
Yeah, and that is true too.
That doesn't help your chances in reprising roles when you are deceased.
Yeah, what has he done for me lately, really, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, we got deep fakes now. I mean, I'm pretty sure we could put him into something. No, that's inappropriate.
I want more deep fakes. Give me an entire movie of them.
I will say this, like David Morse and Barry Pepper are like 2 examples of like, this is also going to sound way meaner than I mean it to be. I don't really think about them all that often, but I always love it when they drop into a movie. I'm like, oh, it's David Morse, or it's Barry Pepper. This is gonna be great, because they usually give solid performances in like supporting roles.
I was watching this movie and I kept thinking, I am pretty sure I watched a TV show or something with David Morse, maybe as a lead, that I really liked, and I couldn't name you what it is or whether I'd even watched it. Does it even exist? Who knows?
He was a pretty big, a huge arc that he portrayed on the TV show House,
Oh, that's
where he was on
probably
for
what
like
it is.
8 or 9 episodes.
No,
where he
I
was
didn't
like
watch
the big
House.
villain.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah,
like
I
a big
didn't watch
villain for
House.
like 8 or 9 episodes,
He's
which
a
was
big
kind of
man,
cool.
so I could see him being a big villain. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
Gotcha.
Right? The brains
And then,
of
do you know anything about James Cromwell, by the way?
He's in a lot of movies.
He was
Yeah.
Farmer Hoggett in Babe, of course. That's where
Right.
a lot of people know him. He is like a super far left hippie. Like, if you ever listen to interviews with him, like, he is so, like, would basically walk around in a burlap sack and barefoot if he could. I'm pretty sure is the kind of guy that he is. And he's British. He's one of those British people who you think is American, but he actually isn't.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know much about him. I just know that he's got a very thin face.
He's another guy who can go swap between like really evil and like very kind,
Yes.
depending on what
Yeah.
you want him to be.
Yeah.
This was, of course, yes, written and directed by Frank Darabont, based on the novel by Stephen King. Here's a quick history of Frank Darabont. He wrote the really good, in my opinion, Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors.
Dream Warriors.
There is some really cool special effects and makeup stuff that goes on in that movie. He also wrote the remake of The Blob in 1988, and then wrote some episodes of Tales from the Crypt and then Young Indiana Jones. But then he started making a name for himself by adapting Stephen King books. That's basically the 3 movies he's directed have all been Stephen King books. So he wrote and directed The Shawshank Redemption in 1994, this movie in 1999, and then The Mist in 2007, which is another brutal movie to watch, which I happen to like quite a bit. But
You would.
there's a lot of non-fans because that is not a happy movie. It ends pretty dire. His big thing is that he helped to develop the TV show The Walking Dead. He wrote a few of the scripts and was the showrunner for the very first season before being fired from that show. Word on the street is that it was in part because the network wanted to reduce the budget, making twice as many episodes for 20% less, which is why I think that the show turned to complete shit in season 2. Or maybe it was. I don't know. That's my
I
biased
never watched
opinion.
it. Yeah, sorry.
If you're going to, watch the first season, and then I think it's awful. But again, I stopped watching halfway through season 2 because I was like, I can't with this. As far as getting into directing again, like there's no announced projects going on right now, but he does own the rights to 2 other Stephen King stories, The Monkey and The Long Walk. Do you know anything about either of those stories?
No, they sound offensive. But lay it on me. Yeah,
Let me just
go
off on a quick tangent here. The monkey is whatever. You know those like little dolls that like clap the cymbals together and then usually do like a quick somersault, the little monkey thing. That's what it is. It's basically the monkey what is it, like a curse or something like that. Anyways, whenever he clashes the cymbals, someone close to the main character dies. That's kind of the gist.
Yeah. It's quality writing there. Yeah, that's exactly.
I know. I'm sure there's a good movie to be made of that. I don't know. It's not my favorite. It's whatever. The Long Walk, however, is one of my favorite stories. I think there's some really cool things you could do with it. Especially you could comment on a lot of stuff that's going on in the world right now.
Like this was long walk? Like how many kilometers? If you had to gauge, right?
Well, here's the spoil the Long Walk here. The Long Walk is the story about a contest that can only be competed with by teenage boys. Or maybe just teenagers in general, but I'm pretty sure it was just teenage boys specifically.
Yeah, not a great start.
With that description, I would have already bought my ticket.
And, the race starts and you walk. You cannot run. You walk. There is a certain speed you have to be under and over. So there's like a range. It's kind of like speed, right? The bus, right? You have to be above a certain speed, but below another speed. Like
I'd be good at this. I'm particularly good at speed walking. Yeah.
But once you start walking, you cannot stop. And if you stop, you get shot in the head and you're killed, right? And so it's basically the last person walking is who wins. So this goes over the span of a few days, right? Of like walking and you're shitting yourself and trying to get to the end and hallucinations and stuff happening.
This is something you can see being made into a film.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. Jesus. I think that there's some interesting things you could do as far as commenting on like our desire to see like reality TV played out to its like logical conclusion. I think that this is basically network but for a modern age in many ways. I think there's ways you have to adapt this, because I don't think you could do like a straight adaptation of this, because it's all in the character's head for the entire thing. So you're gonna have to add a lot of stuff to this. But as a treatise on like the human condition and how far you can push yourself and what humanity means, and like, because he helps people when you're not supposed to help them, and blah 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 blah, all that kind of stuff. Anyways, I think there's some cool stuff. I really like the book, though.
Yeah, apparently.
But I will say, from what I remember, it ends not necessarily on a cliffhanger, but not super clear on what actually happens to the main character. So I'm sure there would have to be a very distinctive, like, this is how we're ending this film.
All right.
Okay, let's get into some spoilers here now. Like, lay it on me. What was good about this movie? What was something that you did not like about this?
I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's such a big undertaking. It's hard to sum up in like a sentence or two. Just topically, the acting, the sort of pacing in those dramatic moments, it's great. And it's a movie that's easily invested in. I think when it starts twisting into the mysticism and the horror, I was kind of in and on it for a bit. The appearance of Wild Bill, Sam Rockwell is the craziest actor to act crazy. He's great.
Right.
But I don't know. I think when movies stories delve into this almost like topical Christian ideologies of like true good versus pure evil, and I start getting a little caught up in my head over analyzing whether this actually has any true meaning, or if this is sort of this polarizing American cultural tendency to just be like, there's something really good about life, or you're like the fucking devil, and there's no in between.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that that's a pretty fair criticism of Stephen King in general. I think he comes down on this kind of like that, where it's like you are either good or you are evil, and not sometimes a lot of middle ground on that. So I find that his villains are usually like the most depraved people on the planet, and his like protagonists are like virtuous and like, always stand up for the right people and stuff like that. So I think that's completely fair. The other thing, though, I find that goes through a lot of Stephen King's work, you see it in this movie, you see it in The Shining, you see it in a bunch of other ones, which is a lot of times there is like this defining moment in your life, and then you are judged by the author. You are judged by the choice you make in that big decision. And I don't necessarily know if that has any necessary relevance to life in that, because I think there's always multiple decisions you have to make each day. But that definitely is what it is, because the Tom Hanks character feels like he needs to have penance, or I don't know, has to seek forgiveness for this one choice that he made. He made the choice to kill John Coffey when he could have decided to do something different. I mean, it would have ruined the rest of his life. But like that's what I mean. Like, he feels like he either could do the right thing or the wrong thing, and he feels like he did the wrong thing, and therefore he must be punished for the rest of his life.
So the thing that came to my mind when I was watching this is, you're an English major, so I'm presuming you've read The Brothers Karamazov.
I've looked at the cover.
Okay. Well, one of the great chapters is the chapter, The Grand Inquisitor.
I actually have it on the bookshelf that's behind
you're
my
actually looking
computer
at it
right now. Yeah.
So it's a fantastic book. And now I like pretending I read. But The Grand Inquisitor, essentially the shell of that chapter is the conceptual stories of what if Jesus came back during the Inquisition. And it's this discussion between the Grand Inquisitor and Jesus. And ultimately, I've read it a few times and I've interpreted different ways. So my recent concept of it is that on the base level, even if Jesus came back for the second salvation, the Inquisitor's basically saying like, it's not going to help. People, A, aren't ready to be that good, and B, we kind of need control over the way society functions, and just being perfectly good is not what the world needs. And I started getting this sense from this movie where John Coffey's character is so childish and this sort of idolizing this Christian ethic of like, good for good's sake. And, this thing where I'm just going to heal and I have no wants of my own, until that moment where he does the wrath of God and just decides to, puke evil into the two evil. And then you're supposed to feel like, oh yeah, they deserved it. You kind of do, because they're painted in such demonic ways.
Right.
But it is childish in its concept, because these are not human characters anymore. They're just pantomimes of pure and good, and it loses some of its grounding.
I think that's what I wrestle with the most, because it feels like I mean, there's some issue with the John Coffey character in general that I want to bring up here in a moment. But it feels like he is trying to resist being the judge. Like he comes and kind of doesn't really care about goodness if he wants to revive you, or if it's an animal, or if it's a young person, or if it's, Tom Hanks's character. But then he makes the choice to be like, well, I am going to, maybe not directly, but basically kill these two characters off. Like he makes that choice, very explicitly makes that choice. And so then what do you do with that? Like, what is this supposed to make us feel? Like, again, yes, we think that's justified because
I felt bad for Percy. He was my favorite character.
it's a child rapist and a person who is like shown to be a petulant child. But do they deserve it? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, that was a tension for me where
Percy specifically, and maybe the child rapist I can get on board with killing. But
well, that's the other weird thing about Sam Rockwell's characters. Starts off almost comedically insane, and then starts to devolve into this like demon. Even this comeuppance for those two characters, even after that disgusting sequence where we have to kind of live through the crime that kind of sets the entire narrative of this thing off and has to be visually represented. That was my cringe moment where I was almost holding my hand up to my TV and just like, I don't know. It can be implied. It doesn't need to necessarily be shown in such a grotesque way. But who makes this idea of what a judge, jury, and executioner? I mean, I felt like at the beginning, this could have been a social commentary about, what do you call it? Death penalties?
Well, I mean, I think that there is a cool like comparison you could make, as John Coffey is considered guilty without really evidence. I guess he's there with the two dead girls, but he doesn't confess to the crime. He says that he didn't do it, but the judge, jury, executioner sends him to death row. Versus, and then bringing that full circle about what he gets to actually choose at the end for himself. I don't know. There's something there that I think you could play around with.
And then, just going quickly back to your thoughts on Tom Cruise. Wow. Tom Hanks' character.
He would have made a very different movie, and it's a lot more running, probably.
Probably. They would need a plane to jump out of. But in
the Green Mile would actually have had to have been a mile long, so he could just like get up speed.
Between cells. Does Tom Hanks, so just going back to this original point, does Tom Hanks' character have the option to do anything about John Coffey? And the reality is in that system, he doesn't. No matter what he believes in, he can't actually say, I mean, he has that moment at the kitchen table where it's like, he can't do anything. You can't fight the system. He went to go see racist Lieutenant Dan and that whole discussion comparing Black Americans to dogs. Jesus, that was kind of hard to digest too. Yeah. It's not that it's inaccurate in its portrayal of how white supremacists will think, but it gives you a little bit of a glimpse of the window of the judiciary system in the United States and how it hasn't evolved that much. But corporal punishment is the word. So I thought at the beginning that it was going to be this subversion of corporal punishment, and it is in some effect. But by the end, I think it loses it to just turn into this white knight, godlike character killing off.
And I think that maybe also why I am so strongly opinionated in not liking the framing devices that are in this film, because he's like beating himself up and it's like, I deserve this, and like I won't get to die until I fully serve my sentence, or I forget what exact words he used. Like I don't know, like what did you actually do?
Right,
you saved a woman from like a terrible fate.
Treated everybody humanely.
You guys seem like, at least in the movie, is presented as a kind person. Wouldn't stand up, let like a bully run roughshod over prisoners. Thought that even prisoners on death row deserve some form of humanity to them.
He pleasured his wife 4 times in one night.
Exactly. I mean, so all these things.
He's doing great. I don't know what the problem
is. I don't know why he feels so compelled that he needs to self-flagellate himself so much. But maybe that's explained a lot more in the book. I just think that it doesn't really make sense by the end of it. Because I think the more interesting thing to wrestle with, and where the movie could end, or maybe even explore it a little bit more fully, is where John Coffey, as played by Michael Clark Duncan, says, like, I'm tired of people being ugly to one another.
Says the ugly person on the podcast.
Which, man, I feel, for me, again, just talking to me, because I'm like the bleeding heart on this show, this hits home really quite succinctly for me here. As this is going to air in audio format, the election just happened 3 days ago in the United States. And no matter who has won that presidency, people are still going to be ugly to one another. And I just don't know what the remedy to that is, or if I should even concern myself with it, but I have to because I'm me and I need to internalize everything. But I think that there is that concept. There's like, why do people need to be ugly to each other? And then Tom Hanks kind of later on says like, well, what do I do when I meet my maker? Do I just tell them that it was my job? Like, that's what he says. Like, how do I contend with this, even though I don't agree with what I'm doing?
Well, you know what this is? This is something along the lines of sort of privileged and puritanical American culture, which is that there's an idealism that there is a perfect state in which everybody can be good to each other, which is a lie, and one in which we can all profit from it, which is also a lie. And I think when one looks at the history of humanity, you can easily surmise that we are capable, all of us, including, us as individuals, of great evil. And if there is a missed mark in this movie, and again, it's unfair to kind of put this on this movie in a broader philosophical context, so to speak, because it's a movie and it's a story. So, why the fuck do I have an opinion about that? But, if there were a thing to pick at, if you were going to Dostoevsky this thing, it's that notion that what if, for example, like I like the idea that John Coffey wanted a release. And I like this idea that Tom Hanks is, pun intended, arrested from being able to save him. But what if the suffered fate of these evil people is simply that they have to die in the Wild Bill's, whatever his name is, Billy Kid's fate. He was going to die anyways, whether they elect him and he was shitting and spitting on people or not. Why it had to be such a graphic, violent, and weird sort of, vengeful Old Testament shit, plague, that cheapened it for me. And maybe you have to do that even to frame a 3-hour movie, never mind a, 120-minute running time. Or there's this assumption that the world is simple and that you are either good or bad, and that these decisions are binary. I mean, this is the whole, I think, preface of polarization in politics, that, you're good if you're red, you're good if you're blue, and it's total bullshit. Like, you need to be, if you recognize that you can be somewhere in the middle all the time, I think that's where life actually is. When people get upset about these things, I think it just reflects more of a naivety, where it sounds so judgmental, but where we just want to believe that things can be nice, and they can be, but
I guess, like, going back to one of Tom Hanks' other roles of Fred Rogers, who by all accounts was like a complete saint of a man somehow. I do sometimes compare myself to like the best of the best sometimes, where it's like, sometimes I have petty thoughts and like get mad and angry and stuff like that. And I look at those people who seem to be able to live a life of grace and niceness and stuff. It's like, could I actually do that? Or would that me just be putting on a role? Does niceness and doing that, is that something that's just innate in people, or is that something that they put on until it does become part of them? And I don't know if it matters. I don't know. Like, I just, where I come on that.
Where we're kind of dancing into is the sense of idolatry, which is that, if you look at Mr. Rogers, should we worship him as let's say, in the Christian rhetoric, as a Jesus figure? So we see this depiction of him, and he does seem to have no flaws, and he helps everybody. Is that who he actually is as a person? No, it's impossible. It's impossible to think that he didn't have darkness in him. Whatever he did with it and however he existed, who knows? I mean, there's that other adage, right? Like, history is written by the victors. So, we look at Gandhi or Mother Teresa or all of these people that we want to pay homage to. They are not nice in all aspects of their life. It is not human. It's not human to not have flaws. Where we get into idolatry is that we pick this one thing and then we want to worship that one part of them and then think that that's the best. So, like, for example, a key thing that I learned is, I read the Steve Jobs biopic, or whatever you want to call it. And you think that this is what everybody should aspire to, this genius, this free thinker, but he's like the biggest prick. He's awful, right? He's dehumanizing. And essentially, I mean, this is unfair a bit, but he killed himself because he was so egotistical. He refused to even listen to other people's, right?
Literally, he could by sheer force of will kill cancer.
Yeah, well,
basically.
with fruit. Yeah, with fruit. But why do we worship him and his company and his products and his vision, right? Those are fascinating.
By the way, iOS 14 just came out. And
you got to be bleeping all that. Yeah. Or Or Apple, you can also send a check to us for.
And then we'll say nothing but good things about Steve Jobs. I was thinking, Dave, a couple weeks ago you said that Steve Jobs was an asshole, and I don't think that's right.
You're right. I've changed my mind. It has nothing to do with these brand new laptops we're sending this out with. But
Also, just to be clear, I want you to worship every part of me.
I guess it's what I'm really thinking of here right now is the type of art I'm consuming and watching. As we're recording this here, just last week at the Emmy Awards, like Schitt's Creek basically swept the awards. First time this has ever happened, where all 4 acting categories, directing, writing, and best show, best comedy in this case, got every category it was nominated for. But what I enjoy about that show and what the acceptance speeches kind of alluded to was the fact that, like, hey, isn't it nice to have a show where like kindness and niceness is celebrated instead of it being like this is a weakness in people? And I agree. I mean, again, it's not like I want every single show to be the exact same thing. And sometimes I want to be in that mood for like a dark and gritty tale. But it is interesting how not very often outside of maybe even children's programming that this idea of being nice, giving back, working on yourself isn't celebrated. It is not seen like you can't make entertainment from that choice. I've just been thinking about that a lot here for like the last week.
Yeah, we've brought it up actually many times, as our rabid fans will know, who have been consuming our content.
Jen had to log off, by the way, so we are streaming to nobody right now. But this will live in perpetuity on our YouTube channel
for our millions of audio subscribers. The cynicism of movie making and critical sort of response. And I think we both kind of allude to, post 9/11 sort of culture shock. We've lost that sense of wonder. And I think maybe I'm just being an old man about this, like in my day, I think
I rewound tapes with a pencil,
which is the only way that one should consume their media, right? Physically. That sense of wonder where, for example, like if you watch Star Wars, the first one. I mean, I personally, like Empire. But
and by the first one, we mean episode 4.
The fourth one, right? No, the first one. And fuck the rest of that whole thing. No, but you just get a couple of good guys. They go through trials and tribulations. They win. In that case, what's great about it is they suffer a great loss too. It's not like they're just these perfect people. They're kind of annoying. And then you leave the theater and it's just a movie. It's not a statement about culture. You don't leave having to have a coffee shop French discussion about the existentialism.
I think you just made about a quarter of the internet just super pissed off.
Yeah. What do you mean
it's just a movie? I speak Wookiee.
So you're like, actually, yeah, that part I've never understood. Like, I'm a nerd, right, Kyle? Yeah. As we've learned, but I'm not a nerd. I like separation between that, right? Like I got upset with the Lord of the Rings movies because they weren't accurate enough, but I don't read the scripts in the books and I don't know how to decipher runes.
I wanted 90 minutes of complete Tom Bombadil. Okay. I needed that.
Right. And I thought to myself, there's no way Tom Bombadil could be in this movie, but just a nodding acquaintance. Just a nodding, like a nudge that he exists in this.
Just his head poking out from behind a tree. Hey guys, and then back.
Or just leading him on, to the first battle.
Or you just have Frodo every so often. It's like, oh man, remember that time we saw Tom Bombadil?
Tom's sweet. Yeah, how's that dude doing, man? As they're smoking their pipes. Now we need grit. Even like you said, even in children's programming, there needs to be an element of not just cynicism, but like so-called reality. And I think that's a polarizing reality, and there's politicized a little bit. There's marketing involved in that, and it's poisoned the well a bit. We still enjoy stuff, like to your point, not just Schitt's Creek, but we're both loving Ted Lasso. And
oh man, talk about like that's a great example too, because that's all about. I'm going to paraphrase, but essentially, like whatever the opposite of toxic masculinity is what Ted is. Yeah. He's not afraid of being like he's a male. He likes like quote unquote male things, but he doesn't think that being nice is a weakness. And in fact, he's in on the joke a lot of the time when people like call that out. He's like, I'm okay with that. Fine. If that's what you think, I'm still going to be nice to people.
And that's and the depth, not to go too much on Ted Lasso and leave the Green Mile, but what's great about that and Schitt's Creek too, this sort of satirical but wholesome writing is that nobody in the Shits family is supposed to be likable, right? They're all supposed to be awful
at
human
least
beings.
not at the beginning. I think they grow into that.
Well, that's the thing about kind-hearted comedy, which is that there is insight to begin with. You design a character. So for example, the inverse is true of Ted Lasso, where you're just like, oh yeah, this guy's a complete rube, but he suffers a lot, and turns out he's pretty woke, and he's aware of what he's doing, and it's intentional. Anyways, we're so far off. We're not even talking about Green Mile. So
no, I mean, well, to
How
get back, there's just a few things.
Get back?
Just to finish that off, because there's something that I noticed that I never noticed before. John Coffey breathes the flies into Percy's mouth, and then Percy goes down and then shoots Wild Bill. Before he shoots Wild Bill, there's 2 tears that run down his cheek from each eye, 1 tear and then the second tear. And I never remember seeing that before. Granted, it was one time, like 20 years ago. But still, I thought, oh, what an interesting choice. I don't know if that was Darabont's choice, whether that was a performance choice. I don't know. But it seems like what he was about to do was not of his own volition necessarily. And I think that adds a little bit of texture to that scene. Basically, that whole thing is my favorite part of the movie. Basically, from them concocting the plan of how to help the warden's wife, them pulling off that little heist, coming back, and the resolution of like the killing and stuff. Like that's like my favorite part of the movie. And then again, like I said, it drags on for another 32 minutes afterwards.
Yeah, I love the evil character building for Percy, and because he's both cruel but a coward, and that's a great sort of bad guy where you can hate him and pity him, but mostly hate him the whole way. So you get a little bit of insight into what drives angry people. And I think, like, to your point, whatever my thoughts are of turning this into, like a horror revenge tale, that moment of, I don't know if it's humanity, but the little break where he's clearly frightened and unwilling. And then as Wild Bill's like abusing him and bullying him, you see that sort of thing where you lash back. It was fascinating.
The other thing I think that needs to be stated, and this is basically going to be like a flashback to our Boys Don't Cry episode. I'm about to go so far out of my lane that I'm going to need you to reel me back in. But one of the criticisms that comes to this movie is this thing called the magical Negro trope. Do you know anything about that at all, Dave?
Sounds awful. Let's do it. Let's learn
basically
about white privilege.
This is, So this is essentially what that is. So in the cinema of the United States, this is from Wikipedia. This is like the best example of this. But in the cinema of the United States, the magical Negro is a supporting stock character who comes to the aid of white protagonists in a film.
Shawshank. Yep, keep going.
Yeah, magical Negro characters who often possess special insight or mystical powers have long been a tradition in American fiction. So essentially what it is like...
Morgan Freeman. It's basically Morgan Freeman.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like, once it's pointed out to you, like, it's amazing how often this does happen, where it's like a story that's happening, you have your white main character, and then a black character comes in and is literally magical or feels like there's some mysticism to them, whose only role in the narrative is to support what the white character is doing. So they have no backstory. They don't have any character arc. There's nothing that you can go really deeper with them. And I do think that John Coffey supports all of those things. It's actually something that was popularized a lot in the film. I think it's called Magical Negro. I've not seen this, but it was Spike Lee, basically, who is never shy to criticize other filmmakers, but he was a big critic of The Green Mile for doing this, because he said, this is basically the super duper magical Negro, because they literally have magical powers that they're coming in. And I think that the urging here is, you can have a character like that, but at least give them some other character trait or something that they're going for, or something that they've designed. But John Coffey literally is like, I don't know how I got here. I don't know where I'm going. He's basically the mind of a child, and he's just there to help, and then he's killed off. Like, that's his whole function in this whole story.
Yeah, that's a really difficult thing as you go into this movie to kind of come to terms with. If you're watching, Michael Duncan or Duncan Clark. Anyways, you're watching
Clark
him
Duncan,
put together this character, and so he's great in it emotionally. He's great in it in sort of, in that sort of empathetic thing where you love his character, but that at the same time, as it drags for 3 hours, you wonder, is it supposed to be a comment on race? And in the end, it's not. Is it supposed to be a comment
it really isn't,
on intellectual something? And it's not. At the end of the day, just like you brought up, his only function is to be a miracle. And this is why I was thinking of the Grand Inquisitor, like this Jesus figure, where it's actually not even a Jesus figure, like this benign, pure good, completely disconnected, two-dimensional character, which is sad. And I think it goes beyond the concept of magical Negro. I think it's just anything outside of the patriarchy, because women are written this way in almost every film until very recently. All minority characters, animals. I don't know. It's kind of like that thing that Gary Sinise starts going on about, treating anything that's not a white male as an animal or as a function to get a story told. So I didn't know that this was a named trope, but it is something uncomfortable by the end of the movie. It's why I have so many questions about even him playing this. I think this is what I got caught up in. He's playing this benign, healing energy something, but then he suddenly becomes vengeful because it's easy to wrap up the storyline of two insanely corrupt, disgusting people, because you can't actually resolve it very well. Because clearly, when he's getting out of the insane out of the hole, Percy's not going to give up on it.
Vengeance is the most human of emotions.
He's going to try again to be a dick, right? With his I know people bullshit, right? The whole thing is kind of a strange thing. And to your, what is it, Chekhov's gun thing, having Wild Bill appear in the same cell block.
Like, something bad's going to happen eventually.
But also to bookend this idea of the false imprisonment of John Coffey it's overly convenient. I mean, I understand how it's important to kind of like, absolve John Coffey from the true nature of whatever crime he was accused of. But it comes off a little bit cheap all of a sudden when Tom Hanks has to relive this moment. You're like, yeah, I mean, that's horrible, of course. But it had to be this guy who appeared at this time, John Coffey's going to kill him with bugs. It started getting far off the rails by the end. For me.
Two things just very quickly, as you said them there. One, I always thought the bugs looked cheap and bad. I never liked the effect. Even back in 1999 or 2000 when I saw this the first time, I was like, it was bad. Because I'm such a Broadway fan, I do have to bring up the fact, too. The other character that gets like violently murdered in this because of Percy's choice is, of course, Dell. Isn't it Dell? I'm going to say that his character's name is Dell. But anyways, Michael Jeter is the actor who plays them, who also had a career on Broadway, won a Tony Award for a show called Grand Hotel. And look up his performance at the Tony Awards in 1990 to see like how much range this gentleman had, because he is basically made of rubber and can dance like kind of crazily.
Like a marionette.
Then going to like this Louisiana Bayou guy who, did they ever say what any of the prisoners are in there for? I don't recall them ever. Like, I'm assuming they killed someone, because that's probably what you're going to go to death row for. But they never actually physically say like what they're actually in jail for.
I think that was the part that hooked me in at the beginning, is this idea of treating humans humanely, regardless of whatever is going on in their life, and then the feedback loop they get by these apparent killers, rapists, and murderers being humane in their last moments. And that goes off the rails pretty quickly, but there are some real moments in there where they do some great psychoanalysis about bullying and about toxic masculinity, which is the catchword right now, and even bro culture. What stays, a little bit of Fight Club action, right? Like what stays on the mile, right? What happens at the mile? What happens in the mile stays on the mile. That kind of stuff.
Here's some other notes. This quick, we don't really have to discuss any of these, but I just want to mention them as we round out the episode here, which is this is the second time we saw Jerry Springer on a television set this season. Do you remember the first time?
No.
Austin Powers, where he actually fights
right.
Jerry Springer in the studio audience.
Yep.
The other thing I wrote down is, thank God I don't have to wear a shirt and tie for everything anymore. I just watch people in like the 30s like change a tire or like rip apart that room. I'm like, I would hate to have to be wearing a shirt and tie to do all that stuff.
There were so many moments where I was kind of having EO face with all the handkerchief blotting. Every moment they're just blotting their faces from sweat and smell and getting spit on. And that was a different generation. And that's still a very hygienic one compared to the generation 50 years before that. And the generation which spawned the high heel shoe for men, which is when sewage ran down the streets of London.
their fascination with the mouse originally, as it's running around the prison, basically proves to me that everybody gets bored at work, because it was such a great example of being like, oh, let's just like play with this mouse for half a day and figure out what's going to go on. Because I've been there on certain jobs. There's like, I have to do something for like the next 3.5 hours, so this might as well be it.
That's me all day, every day.
I also think, because I hate mice and am terribly frightened of them, that Percy has a point of killing the mouse. So,
well,
I didn't feel so bad when he stomped on it, to be perfectly frank.
That's your farmness. I'll give you this quick
That's
anecdote.
farm wisdom, I'll have you know. Farm wisdom.
Well, it might be. So Helen and I had a townhouse in Scarborough, in Toronto, and we actually had a mouse appear one day. And so the two things that happened is I learned that I'm pretty squeamish. Like, I thought I would be brave and catch it. So we bought these, they're called like humane traps. And essentially I learned first that mice love peanut butter, not cheese.
Oh, sure. 100% they do,
which I didn't know that. So we put the peanut butter in the live trap. But what happened was, because I didn't realize how light mice must be, so the trap had closed. I didn't notice. I came home and Helen was with me, and I was like, I don't know if it's in here. And I opened the trap and it jumped out, and I screamed. I was like, oh my God.
I'm literally covering my face. That freaked me the fuck out. I couldn't do it. If you want to see me lose my mind, that would be have a mouse jump at my face, and I would.
And it's not, they're more frightened, and then we caught it again. And, so I did that.
Whoa, what a stupid mouse. You would think I would have learned the first time.
I don't know how to audio describe, the pinch finger, fearful holding of the trap. But I drove it, maybe a kilometer down to release it.
I drove it to Windsor, and I just threw it out the window.
I drove it a kilometer down to free it in nature, which is basically the next subdivision of townhouses. So, it's their problem now. So, so the farm wisdom, should it have died to prevent the next colony of mice? I don't know. But hopefully,
yes.
a city owl or a trash panda had a great meal that day. Although I don't wish ill on any mouse, but
I do.
Circle of life.
On every single one of them, I wish ill. Lastly, I always like creative swearing in movies. I just think it's so lovely. When the warden, after like the horribleness of Percy not using the wet sponge and like that whole like gruesome scene, I love the warden coming downstairs and going, "What in the blue fuck?"
A quick note on patriarchy is the horror of a brain tumor causing his wife to use language I had never even know she knew about. And you're just like, well, fuck, man. Like, people fucking swear. Like, just
get over it.
It was weird, though, right?
So what? She has a tumor. No, I actually thought it was even more hilarious when you actually see her later on. And I don't think this one was even all that bad. Like, really. I was expecting, like, Exorcist, I guess, level stuff. And all I got was, like, pig fucker. I'm like, all right, whatever.
Yeah, I did a lot of
Who has been called a pig fucker by their wife before? Come on.
They did a good makeup. Patricia Arquette, when you first see her, or Arquette, Jesus.
Patricia Clarkson.
When you see her first in the wheelchair and she actually looks, emaciated, and then in the bed where there's a horror element. She's like disfigured even. If you're going to take the filter off and you're going to suggest she's using language that you didn't even know a person should know, you can do better than pig fucker.
We're done here.
Well, the machine has told us that we need to wrap this up here then. So thank you for the one person who checked out our live stream here
Jen,
tonight. This is something...
Yeah,
we'll do this a little bit more often. So if you do want to jump aboard the train of being notified, yes, you can go to our YouTube channel. You can just type in Kyle and Dave versus the Machine into YouTube, and you will be able to find our channel. Subscribe to it, and it will be notifying you when we do go live.
You could call it hopping on our Polar Express to listen to our Toy Story.
Absolutely not.
No.
You can also get in contact with us if there's comments, suggestions, irritations that you have. Kyle and Dave vsthemachine at gmail.com. You can send us correspondence that way.
Those contact information is also valid for Stars and for Apple. Yes.
Yeah, let Stars know that they should be a sponsor on this very show. We need to rate this film. You can check out our entire list of films. We have a lot of them over there now. And you can do that on our Letterboxd page, letterboxd.com/KDVSTM. And KDVSTM is also our two media handles on Twitter and on Instagram. And I will throw out there one more time that if you want to help us for free, because you can also support us over on Patreon, but for free, you can go to whatever podcast app you're using and give us a rating over on there. Dave, what would you rate this film out of 5?
Quick interjection. Relevant today?
I think that there's enough. I do think that this is... I wish that there was a 2-hour cut of this film somehow, or at least a 2-hour and maybe 10-minute cut of this film. But the high highs, I think, overshadowed the low lows for me personally.
I don't think that this is a particularly relevant movie anymore. Now I'm going to get some straight internet hate.
Oh yeah, because again, I told you, people love this movie.
Fuck
like
all
they
y'all.
love this movie.
Yeah, if you 94%ers, yeah, if you can imagine me on audio giving you the finger, flipping you the bird.
I think that's honestly what the super rich should do. Just go outside and be like, fuck the 94%.
Well, those two assholes did it with their machine guns. No, okay, let's get at it. Rating, I think I'll stay in a solid 3. Yeah, 3.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a good movie, but I think for the points we have outlined in our very, very most distracted episode of all time, I don't resonate with it that well, but I'll give it a 3.
I am more positive on it. Like I said, like the stuff that I like about this movie, I feel like in the future, if and when I jump back to this, I'll probably just fast forward through the stuff that I don't like and just focus on that middle portion, which I think is lovely. I'm giving it a 4. It's a solid 4 for me.
Tom Hanks, if you ever listen to this, I will give your P face a 5.
Yeah, again, should have won your 3rd Oscar for P face.
And if you haven't seen it, just Google it.
There has to be a GIF of it. Or GIF? What am I supposed to say?
I don't know.
So that means that it averages out to 3.5. So that's what this movie is going to get. Dave, we have a tie. A 4-way tie here, in fact. So I'll go from the top to the bottom. That is The Mummy, Girl Interrupted, Three Kings. Where would you put this movie in relation to those, do you think?
On rewatchability, I'd put it at the bottom.
Okay. Because we're split here a little bit, I think we should maybe put it somewhat in the middle here. I don't think I want to put it like right at the very bottom, but let's do this as a compromise. Let's put it in between Three Kings and Girl Interrupted.
All right.
Because I want to. I don't have any other big special reason for
Who's the captain now, right?
Who is the captain now? So, entering our list at the number probably 19 position, although currently it's the 18th position, but probably is actually number 19, is The Green Mile. So we should probably find out what we are reviewing here next week here, Dave. Let me just push this little old button. We are definitely going through the Best Picture nominees. That's what this machine is doing.
Don't pretend you know anything about me.
And so next week, we're going to be watching Michael Caine in The Cider House Rules. Have you seen The Cider House Rules?
No. That's just a flat no. I got nothing.
I have never actually even been interested in watching this film, to be perfectly honest. And I have been told it is a movie that was, nominated for Best Picture, but is considered one of the worst movies nominated for Best Picture.
I cannot wait.
I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if that's true or not.
What we'll need to do is we'll need to find someone to suffer through that with us, because
there's nobody out there, literally 0 people in the world that are like, you know what I want to do? I want to watch The Cider House Rules tonight.
You know what would be even crazier is if that hypothetical person chose to watch this movie.
I don't know what you're talking
alert.
about.
Cliffhanger.
Yeah.
A Stephen King ending.
Do you think... I guess we should turn on the lights here then, I guess.
Why are you holding that straight razor? I don't need a haircut right now.
I know, but I was hoping that you could maybe shave my back.
Oh, God. Just don't forget to wet the sponge.
Vengeance is the most human of emotions.